Hey, I'm Alex X, and you're listening to Money Talks, episode number 16. Today, we're doing a deep dive into the stories behind entrepreneurs who faced rejection, who heard no, but managed to turn that into a massive yes. We'll look at their struggles, their breakthroughs, and hopefully pull out some lessons for how you can maybe do the same. And joining me to unpack these stories is Sarah. So, let's get into it. We're exploring these entrepreneurial journeys, right? Including some of the really personal challenges they faced.
In this deep dive, we're really digging into those stories. You know, entrepreneurs who just wouldn't take no for an answer.
Yeah, the ones who faced setback after setback, but managed to turn it all around. It's about their struggles, yeah, but also their successes and the lessons learned.
Exactly. And the idea is to figure out how you, listening right now, can maybe apply some of that grit, those strategies, to your own path.
So today, we're zoning in on one story in particular, Leah Solivan, the founder of TaskRabbit.
TaskRabbit. Right. We'll be looking at the hurdles she faced, and there were quite a few, both business-wise and personally, too.
And how she navigated all those no moments, those roadblocks, to eventually build something really successful.
Okay, so let's set the scene. TaskRabbit, it's basically that online platform, right?
Yeah.
Connects people needing tasks done.
With people who can do them.
Yeah.
Your taskers. Simple idea now, but back then.
Well, like a lot of great ideas, it started from a really relatable, almost mundane problem.
It really did. You have to picture it. Boston, 2008, it's snowing. Leah Solivan's about to go out, but she realizes, disaster.
What happened?
She's totally out of dog food for Kobe, her lab. And the thought of going out in the snow,
We've all been there, that feeling of, I wish someone else could just do this for me.
Exactly.
Ooh.
And that was the spark. She thought there has to be a better way. She looked at her iPhone, which was still pretty new then, remember, and thought, what if I could use this to find someone nearby, right now, who could grab the dog food?
And she'd pay them for it, obviously. The convenience factor.
Precisely. That little inconvenience, that became the aha moment. She saw how this device could connect people's needs and skills in real time.
And she even came up with a name pretty fast, didn't she?
Yeah, runmyerrand.com. Check the domain.
And don't tell me.
Available. $6.99.
Wow, just like that. It really shows how sometimes the biggest ideas come from, well, the smallest frustrations.
It does. And it makes you think, doesn't it? What everyday annoyances are you just putting up with? Could there be an opportunity hidden in there? Solivan's situation wasn't unique, but her reaction to it, that was different.
Right. But, okay, having the idea, even buying the domain, that's miles away from actually building a company. It takes a huge leap.
A massive leap.
Yeah.
And when you look at her background, it's even more striking.
What was she doing before this?
She was an engineer at IBM, serious stuff programming in C++ and Java.
IBM, so a stable, well-paying job.
Yeah. 6 figures.
Yeah.
Secure career path. And she walked away from all that.
To pursue Run My Errand.
Yes. And get this, she cashed out her entire $27,000 pension fund to get it started.
Whoa. Okay, that's serious commitment. Talk about betting on yourself.
Definitely skin in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And she wasn't just hiding away writing code. She was out there working from coffee shops.
Trying to get feedback.
Exactly. Talking to potential users, getting their real unfiltered thoughts. That early hustle, wasn't just about showing grit.
It was about validating the idea, learning.
Precisely. Getting that crucial product market fit information right from the source, not building in a bubble. Which raises a question for anyone listening who's thinking about their own big idea.
Do you have that courage to take the calculated risk? Step away from the comfortable.
And really listen to what people need, even when it's maybe not what you first envisioned.
So she took the plunge, got some initial cash from her pension. What were those first concrete steps in building the actual platform?
Well, the first big focus was trust and safety. Super important for a platform like this.
Makes sense. You're letting strangers run your errands or come into your home.
Exactly. So she personally vetted the first group of taskers, about 30 of them, handpicked them herself.
Okay. And how did she get the first users?
Smart move here. She launched a closed beta, but focused it very tightly. A mother's group in Boston.
Interesting. Why them specifically?
About 900 moms, all living within like 1 square mile. A concentrated group, likely with similar needs, and importantly, a built-in trust network. Great for getting targeted feedback.
That is smart. Test the waters in a controlled way. And she wasn't just directing things from behind a desk, was she?
No way. This is maybe my favorite part. She became the very first tasker herself.
You're kidding.
Nope. riding her Vespa scooter all over Boston, literally running errands for people,
What?
picking up dry cleaning, groceries, you name it.
Wow. Talk about understanding your business from the ground up. You can't get more hands-on than that.
Right. And that direct experience gave her incredible insight. She saw what worked, what didn't, from both sides. The person requesting the task and the person doing it.
What was one of the big lessons from, being tasker number one?
Huge one was about constraints. Initially, the service was too open-ended. You could ask for almost anything.
And that was a problem.
Yeah, because people didn't know what to ask for. It was too broad. They needed clearer boundaries, a more defined service offering.
Okay, so less do anything, more we help with these specific things.
Exactly. It really highlights how crucial it is, especially early on, to be involved in every part of your business. You learn things you just wouldn't otherwise.
That direct involvement seems key. So the idea is proving itself. She's learning tons, but she probably realized she couldn't do it all alone forever, right? Needed support.
Absolutely, and she was proactive about it. Started sharing her vision, reaching out, looking for mentors, advisors.
Any key connections early on?
A big one was Scott Griffith. He was the CEO of Zipcar at the time.
Oh, wow. Another sharing economy pioneer.
Right. He really got the idea, believed in it. He didn't just give advice, he actually gave her workspace, which was huge back then. Real tangible support.
That kind of validation must have been incredible. Someone who's already built something successful saying yes.
Definitely. And that relationship kind of opened other doors too. It led to her applying to Facebook's startup incubator, FB Fund.
FB Fund. Okay, that sounds like a big step up. Moving out west.
Yep, moved to the West Coast, got accepted into the program. That was a real catalyst. Gave her access to a whole new network, a different ecosystem.
And funding usually follows that kind of move, right?
It did. During the incubator, she managed to raise $1.8 million in seed funding.
That's serious cash to really start building.
It is. And crucially, she met some really influential people there. Tim Ferriss, the author and entrepreneur.
4-hour workweek guy.
That's the one. He became a mentor. And he actually introduced her to her first big investor,
Who was that?
Ann Miraco from Floodgate Venture Capital. So the network effect was really kicking in.
Okay, so things are accelerating, funding, mentors. What about the name? Was it still Run Myron then?
Good question. Around this time, they made the switch. Run Myron became TaskRabbit.
TaskRabbit. Definitely catchier, more dynamic.
Yeah, it captured the energy better, I think. And right after that rebrand, they closed a much bigger funding round, a $5 million Series A.
$5 million. Okay, now we're talking serious scaling potential.
Exactly. That Series A fuel allowed them to expand massively. They went from, 100 runners in Boston
Phew.
to 2,000 taskers across 5 different cities.
Wow, that's rapid growth. But rapid growth usually comes with, growing pains.
Oh, absolutely. Scaling introduces a whole new level of complexity. And for tech companies, platform changes are always a bit risky.
What kind of platform challenges did they face?
Well, a big one was the rise of the smartphone, specifically the Apple App Store launching. TaskRabbit started mostly web-based,
Right.
but they knew mobile was the future. So they decided to build a dedicated mobile app, shifting to a mobile-first strategy.
Makes sense. But risky to change the core experience. How did they handle the rollout?
They made a really interesting strategic choice. They decided not to launch the new mobile-first app in the US initially.
Oh, where did they launch it then?
London.
Yeah.
A completely new market for them.
Yeah.
The idea was to test and refine it there before bringing it to their huge established US user base.
Launching in a fresh market to test a major overhaul. Bold move. How did London go?
According to Solivan, the London launch actually went pretty well. The app worked, people used it, it gained traction. A success, basically.
Okay, so far so good. Then they brought it back to the US.
Yes. And that's when things went sideways. Bringing that same mobile-first app, the one that worked in London, back to their millions of existing US customers and 50,000 taskers.
Let me guess. It didn't go smoothly.
In her own words, a complete disaster.
Ouch. A complete disaster. What happened? Why did it fail so badly in the US when it worked in London?
It seems the shift was just too jarring for the established users. People were used to the web interface, their workflows. The mobile-first approach really disrupted things, caused a lot of confusion and frustration.
That's tough. It shows how you can't just assume what works in one context will work everywhere, especially with your core users.
Exactly. It's that tricky balance between innovating and keeping your existing customers happy. What worked for new users in London just didn't translate well for the experience base in the US.
So how did TaskRabbit bounce back from a complete disaster? It sounds like it could have been fatal.
It could have been, but they didn't give up. They actually used the fact that London had been successful as sort of proof that the mobile-first concept itself was sound.
So they stuck with it.
They did, but they had to invest heavily in retraining their existing taskers on the new system, really working to win back the trust of the users. Lots of communication, support.
Damage control, essentially, but also adaptation.
Absolutely. And eventually it worked. They managed to smooth things over, onboard new users who started with a mobile experience and basically recovered. It really speaks to resilience,
Definitely. Learning from mistakes, adapting. Critical skills. Okay, so they navigated that crisis. The journey continues, right? There were changes in leadership later on.
That's right. Eventually, Leah Solivan stepped aside as CEO. She promoted Stacey Brown-Philpott to the role.
Is it common for founders to step back like that?
It happens quite often, yeah. As companies grow and scale, the required leadership skills can change. Sometimes a founder recognizes someone else is better suited for that next phase.
Makes sense. And then came the really big news, the acquisition.
Yes, in September 2017, TaskRabbit was acquired by IKEA.
IKEA! Right, I remember that. Seemed like an unusual pairing at first glance. Furniture giant buys gig economy platform.
It did seem a bit surprising, but there was a backstory. IKEA had actually partnered with TaskRabbit before the acquisition.
Oh, really? How?
They ran a pilot program in London where IKEA customers could hire taskers specifically for furniture assembly.
Ah, the dreaded IKEA flat pack assembly. That makes perfect sense. I bet that was popular.
Apparently it was very successful. Reports said it even drove up IKEA's average order value in London. Because let's face it, a lot of people want the furniture but dread building it.
Guilty as charged. So TaskRabbit solved a real pain point for IKEA customers. But why buy the whole company instead of just continuing the partnership?
Good question. Several likely reasons. One, owning TaskRabbit gave IKEA direct access to that skilled workforce and the technology platform managing it. No more middleman.
Control and integration.
Exactly. Plus, think about the competition. Amazon and others were moving into home services too. Acquiring TaskRabbit helped IKEA bolster its own service offerings and stay competitive.
Keeping up with the Amazons of the world. Strategic move.
Definitely. And there was apparently a decent cultural fit too. Both companies had this sort of focus on sustainability, community. That probably helped.
And TaskRabbit already had links with other retailers, right? Like Amazon, Wayfair.
They did, which likely made them even more attracted to IKEA, buying not just the platform, but its existing integrations and potential reach. It was more than just furniture assembly. It was about owning a piece of the broader home services ecosystem.
A really strategic acquisition when you break it down. So after founding, scaling, navigating disasters, and selling the company, what did Leah Solivan do next?
Take a long vacation. You'd think.
Yeah.
But no, she jumped into something completely different, yet related. She moved into venture capital, became an investor.
From founder to funder, interesting shift. What drove that?
From what she said, it seems like it was driven by this constant desire to learn and engage with new ideas. She sort of accidentally started TaskRabbit because she believed in the tech.
Right, solving her own problem.
And being an investor lets her constantly see new technologies, new business models across all sorts of industries. It feeds that curiosity, that drive.
That's a huge perspective shift, though, going from being laser focused on your one company to looking at a whole portfolio of companies.
Totally different world. And she said one of the biggest surprises was understanding the internal dynamics of a VC fund.
How so?
Well, as a founder, you're obsessed with your direct competitors, right? Who's trying to eat your lunch in your market.
Naturally.
But as an investor, she realized her portfolio companies were, in a way, competing against each other within the fund itself.
Competing for what?
For future funding, for the fund's limited capital. Even if they were in totally different industries, they were still vying for those follow-on investment dollars from the same pot.
Huh. I never really thought about that internal competition within a VC fund. That's fascinating.
Right. It's an angle founders probably don't see when they're pitching.
Did that insight lead to any specific advice she gives entrepreneurs now?
Yes, a really practical piece of advice. She tells founders who are raising money, ask the investors specifically how much capital in their current fund is actually set aside or earmarked for new investments in companies like yours.
Why is that important?
Because knowing that gives you context. Is this fund nearing the end of its investment cycle? Are they saving capital for their existing winners? It helps you plan your own fundraising strategy much more effectively. Real insider knowledge there.
That's incredibly valuable advice. Okay, so Leah Solivan's story is obviously amazing, full of lessons, but it's also worth placing it in a slightly broader context, right? Especially thinking about women entrepreneurs.
That's a really important point. While her journey is unique, women founders, especially in the digital space, often face extra layers of challenges, systemic stuff.
Yeah, research, like from the Women Tech Network, highlights some of these recurring issues, like access to funding.
Definitely. Bias, conscious or unconscious, can still make it harder for women-led companies to secure investment compared to male counterparts. That's a persistent problem.
And things like the digital skills gap or online harassment.
Both big issues. Ensuring equal access to specialized tech training is crucial. And sadly, online harassment and gender bias are still realities that can really undermine confidence and participation.
It's frustrating that these are still conversations we need to have. What else?
There's the ongoing challenge of balancing work and home life, where societal expectations often still place a heavier burden on women. Finding relatable mentors can sometimes be harder too.
And just navigating stereotypes, maybe having to work harder to establish credibility.
Exactly. Even things like cybersecurity worries or keeping up with constant algorithm changes can hit differently. So yes, celebrating Solivan's success is important, but acknowledging the landscape she navigated and that many women still navigate adds another layer of respect for her achievements.
Absolutely. Okay, let's try and pull this all together. If you had to boil down the core lesson from Leah Solivan and TaskRabbit, what would it be?
I think it's really a testament to turning a simple need, that dog food problem, into something huge through, well, sheer perseverance, definitely. But also being incredibly adaptable, learning from everything, the good and the bad.
And being strategic, not just lucky. Building the network, making smart choices.
Right. It wasn't just about having the idea, it was the relentless execution and evolution.
So for you listening, thinking about your own goals, your own no moments, what can you take away?
Think about how Solivan approached risk. It was calculated, not reckless. How she actively sought help and mentorship. How she wasn't afraid to pivot, even when it was painful, like that app launch disaster.
And how she kept an eye on the bigger picture, the whole ecosystem.
Exactly. Those are principles you can apply anywhere, really, whether you're starting a company, working on a project, whatever your ambition is.
So here's something to chew on, a final thought. What's that small, maybe annoying, everyday frustration you have? Could it just maybe hold the kernel of a really interesting idea?
Like the dog food problem. What tiny baby step could you take, maybe even today, just to explore that potential a little bit? Like checking if a domain name is free.
Just like Leah Solivan did. Keep exploring these stories, keep seeking out resources. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.